Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 News stream live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. The NATO countries meeting at summit in Madrid will officially invite Sweden and Finland to join the alliance. President Volodymyr Zelensky asked the United Nations to expel Russia from the UN. An explosive public testimony of former White House aide told the January 6 committee that Donald Trump was informed that protesters had weapons, but he still supported them to march inside the Capitol. Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso has escaped an attempt by opposition lawmakers to remove him. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. Zionist forces have shot dead a Palestinian man in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin after armed clashes broke out between the Zionist army and Palestinian fighters following a downed army raid, according to official Palestinian news agency. 25-year-old Mohammed Maher was shot in the chest and brought in a local hospital on Wednesday. It remains unclear why Maher was shot. However, Zionist forces claimed that they had been attacked, leading to this shooting. The UN Security Council is to hold a closed-door meeting today on Moroccan policy of brutal attack which killed 23 African migrants trying to close the border fence toward the Spanish territory of Malaya. The meeting is being held at the initiative of Kenya, Gabon, and Ghana. The current member states of the UN Security Council, dozens of international organizations, especially human rights organizations, signed a joint statement condemning the bloody attack of the Moroccan border guards and the use of excessive force against African migrants. The Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arkab, is expected to participate today by the video conference in the work of the ministerial conference of the OPEC+. Talks of the meeting will be devoted to examination of the situation of the international oil markets and its prospects for short-term developments. The talks of the first day of the Geneva meeting were concluded. The talks that brought together the heads of the Libyan House of Representatives and the High Council of State and the UN sponsorships led to agreement between Akila Saleh and Khalid al-Mashri on the conditions necessary for presidential elections. Indirect talks between Iran and the United States aimed at removing U.S. sanctions will resume this week, according to the Iranian Foreign Ministry, the spokesman. The European Union would negotiate separately with the U.S. and Iran as mediator, and there would be no direct negotiations between the two countries. The NATO countries meeting at a summit in Madrid will officially invite Sweden and Finland on Wednesday to join the alliance after lifting the Turkish veto on the membership on Tuesday evening. Hussein Burkan.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg announced that Sweden and Finland's admission to NATO will take place today, Wednesday. Stoltenberg added in a statement during his speech at the opening session of the second day of the 32nd summit of NATO, which is currently being held in Spanish capital Madrid, that the process of Finland and Sweden's accession to NATO is proceeding at an unprecedented speed, and the date of their membership depends on the ratification of the accession protocol and the ratification of the 30 parliaments.
We will make a decision today, or at least at the summit, to invite Finland and Sweden to become members. That's unprecedented quick. I think you can hardly find any other accession process with so few weeks between the application that happened mid-May and the invitation that will happen now. Then, of course, after the invitation, we need the ratification process in 30 parliaments. That always takes some time, but I expect also that to go rather quickly, because allies are ready to try to make that ratification process happen as quickly as possible.
For his part, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson described the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO as a major step forward.
First lesson really from today is that if Vladimir Putin was hoping that he would be getting less NATO on his western front as a result of his unprovoked illegal invasion of Ukraine, he's been proved completely wrong. He's getting more NATO. This is a historic summit in many ways, but we've already got two new members coming in, Finland and Sweden, a huge step forward for our alliance.
This decision came after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has obtained full cooperation from the two Nordic countries against the Kurdish PKK fighters and their allies. Turkey has agreed to the entry into NATO of Finland and Sweden after more than 3 hours of discussions Tuesday in Madrid on the sidelines of the summit of the Atlantic Alliance.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has asked the United Nations to expel Russia from the UN. This comes after Russian missiles strike hit a shopping mall in the city of Kremenchuk, which the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says it was hangar for Western weapons. Nabil Khazini.
This footage is the last published by Ukraine's president, claiming it shows an evidence of the exact moment when Kremenchuk shopping mall was hit by a Russian missile strike, a strike Zelensky says was deliberate. However, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov pointed out that the strike targeted depots where American and European weapons were stored, and that the shopping center was empty.
A hangar where American and European arms and ammunition were arriving was bombarded. Do we bother you? Following the detonation of the ammunition, an empty shopping center nearby caught fire.
Following the incident and next to the 15 member states of the UN Security Council, Volodymyr Zelensky urged the United Nations to expel Russia from the UN.
It's imperative to establish the tribunal for investigating everything that Russian troops have done against Ukrainians.
And there in Mykolaiv, in the southern of Ukraine, at least 3 people were killed and 5 wounded following a Russian missile strike on a residential building. Moscow says it was a training base for foreign mercenaries.
The Russian armed forces continue to strike military facilities on Ukrainian territory. Within the last 24 hours, Russia's airspace forces has destroyed 4 command posts, including those of Kharkiv 1 and Kharkiv 2 territorial defense battalions near Kharkiv, as well as training base of foreign mercenaries near Mykolaiv.
The Kremlin says Ukraine is only a tool in the hands of the West, and that further supplying it with weapons will absolutely lead to undesirable and rather unpleasant scenarios.
A Russian-backed senior official in the Kherson region said authorities are preparing a referendum to join the Russian Federation. Moscow's backed administration in the city is also preparing to offer Russian passports to its citizens and also begin introducing the ruble as currency in Kherson. In a meeting with the King Philip of Spain, US President Joe Biden said NATO allies are ready to face Russia's threats after what he considers to be the most significant abuse of power since the Second World War II, adding that there is a struggle between autocracies and democracies.
We're ready to face the threats of Russian aggression because, quite frankly, there's no choice. It's been the most significant abuse of power since World War II and an invasion of that many people into another country in Europe. Some people thought that was not likely to happen again, but it did. But we responded. We responded in unison. So we have to stay together. The unity is important, And I think we're off to a very, very good start, demonstrating the power of democracies in the second quarter of the 21st century. Because there is a contest between autocracies and democracies, and we have to succeed.
The January 6 panel met Tuesday for a quickly scheduled hearing, its sixth this month, to present new and urgent evidence about what former President Donald Trump knew before, during, and after the Capitol rebellion. Murzian.
Our witness today is Ms.
In a surprise hearing, a former White House aide, Cassidy Hutchinson, made a dramatic testimony on Tuesday before the House committee investigating the 2021 Capitol insurrection. The testimony under oath revolved around potentially unlawful conduct on former President Donald Trump and his two closest advisors. Hutchinson testified that Trump was trying to let armed protesters avoid security screening at a rally to protest his 2020 election defeat.
The primary reason is because he wanted it full and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deemed as weapons and our weapons. I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
The little-known former White House aide said Trump tried to grab the steering wheel of the presidential SUV when the Secret Service refused to let him go to the Capitol. Hutchinson's testimony came in a surprise sixth hearing scheduled by the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol Hill attack. The committee said that its final two hearings would come in July, but abruptly announced the latest hearing to present new evidence. Trump claimed he hardly knows Hutchinson and criticized her while also distancing himself from her in a post on his social media platform Truth Social. The former U.S. president denied much of what Hutchinson said on his social media platform, calling her a total phony and bad news. Members of the panel praised the young ex-aide and said other witnesses did not want to cooperate. Trump is blamed for conjuring the violent crowd and sending them towards the Capitol by the committee that placed him at the center of a multifaceted conspiracy to overturn his loss to President Joe Biden in the 2020 election.
Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in prison in her New York trafficking case for helping the financer Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse girls as young as 14 and exploit them. The British woman expressed her sympathy for all the victims while blaming her ex-accomplice who killed himself in prison while waiting for his trial in 2019.
Her statement felt like a very hollow apology to me. She did not take responsibility for the crimes that she committed, and it felt like once more her trying to do something to benefit her and not at all about the harm that she had caused.
I feel like the judge took into account everything that she needed to take into account. She took into account the severity of what Maxwell and Epstein did to us, and I think that 20 years is reasonable considering all of that. So we're happy to finally have some closure.
Migrants smuggled across the border from Mexico to the U.S. took lives of 51 people when they were left in a tractor trailer without air conditioning in the blazing Texas heat.
The death toll of people who died after being stuck inside a truck trailer reached 51. According to officials, 39 males and 11 females were among the dead. 22 were from Mexico, 7 from Guatemala and 2 from Honduras.
At this moment, we have confirmed 7 people of Guatemalan nationality, and we know there are also Mexican and Honduran brothers affected by this tragedy.
The question of how long the victims were abandoned on the side of the road was not immediately answered. Following the incident, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador offered his condolences to the families of the victims.
I would like to express my deepest condolences to the families of the Mexican, Guatemalan, and Honduran migrants who died yesterday in a truck.
Desperate families were reaching out to the Mexican consulate in San Antonio throughout the morning looking for their loved ones.
I'm so fed up. I'm so tired. that we keep saying that we have been here before, that we have done this before, that we know how to respond to this. It shouldn't have to be that way.
They don't have a choice. They don't have a life, and they don't feel safe. They're hungry. So for them, America is not a choice. It's the only option they have.
Officials in San Antonio took aim at the state's immigration policies and slammed Governor Greg Abbott for what they said was his politicization of the tragedy.
Let me tell you, I don't trust the state of Texas on any of dealing with immigrants. Nationwide, the federal government, they are protected. I can't tell you what some state official will do. They've passed so many laws that try to discriminate against immigrants.
Attempts to cross the U.S. border from Mexico have claimed thousands of lives in both countries in recent decades. The deceased migrants were discovered on the outskirts of Texas City, where temperatures swelled to a high of more than 39 degrees Celsius. The incident is considered as one of the deadliest human trafficking tragedies in recent history.
Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso has escaped an attempt by opposition lawmakers to remove him and resisted further talks with an indigenous leader to end more than 2 weeks of protests after a soldier was murdered in an attack on a gasoline convoy. Zara Farjani.
Ecuadorian government of Guillermo Lasso has survived impeachment after parliament rejected a motion blaming him for the country's paralysis after 2 weeks of indigenous community protests against the high cost of living. The motion garnered 80 votes in the 137-member Congress. Lasso halted negotiations with indigenous leader after a protester attack that left 1 soldier dead and 12 wounded while guarding a fuel convoy in the Amazon part of the country. The conservative head of state called the attack a criminal act, accusing indigenous leader Leonidas Aiza of self-serving politics.
We will no longer sit down to dialogue with Leonidas, who only defends his political interests and not those of his supporters. We're not going to negotiate with those who hold Ecuador hostage, with those who attack our security forces and gamble with the health and lives of Ecuadorians.
Ecuadorian indigenous leaders reacted to the suspension of negotiations by the government. Leonidas Aiza affirmed his willingness to continue the protests until peace is guaranteed.
Just to say that due to poverty, our communities have no other options but to fight. That's why we are here. I want to ask the brothers who are here, buddies, we will guarantee peace.
Calling with absolute respect the President of the Republic that we must resume dialogue and sit down again, that we cannot at any time abandon this path, which is the only way to resolve conflicts. There is no other possibility.
The powerful Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador has called for the largest protests of over 17 million people in reaction to rising living costs and economic hardship in the country.
The Filipino news site Rappler has been ordered to close, but Philippine Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Ressa pledged on Wednesday to fight the order. The news site Rappler is known for its critical reporting of President Rodrigo Duterte's policies. The announcement of the closure came on the eve of the end of Duterte's presidency.
We have long stood by the constitutionality of this agreement. It's a Philippine depository receipts. Others have had it. I think that you've heard me state repeatedly over the last 6 years that we have been harassed. This is intimidation. These are political tactics. We refuse to succumb to them.
Now moving on to Iran, the competition during the 90th edition of the Mediterranean Games seems to be very challenging for all participating athletes in the different disciplines, as all the players are showing an outstanding high level of willingness to achieve the maximum of medals. Osama Ayadi.
Mediterranean Games around 2022 are still witnessing competitive games in the diverse sports as they reach their 4th day. Algerian athletes have been present with high-level performances as a number of athletes succeeded to book their place in the next rounds of the tournament. The artistic gymnastics competition offered Turkey the golden medal in the finals amid strong competition in the 6 different events, while the Algerian gymnasts could not succeed to reach a medal.
It was really hard today to compete after yesterday without so much rest, but I managed to achieve it, and I managed to do all my apparatus. I'm very glad about myself. I have been working so much for this. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for everything.
The Algerian national team of volleyball could catch up after beating their Greek opponents during the third round of the second group. This comes after they lost the two previous matches against France and Turkey.
After each win there is happiness, especially after the loss against the French team. We have seen a strong reaction of the national team. I think yesterday they were upset about the loss against France. They were strong morally, and they did a very good match. Their match was very good and I liked it a lot.
The two female Algerian boxers qualified to the semi-finals of the tournament, which is scheduled for Thursday, as they showed their willingness to reach another golden medal for Algeria, which is taking the best place.
We honored Algeria and we are responsible, and we contribute for the success of these games, and hopefully we'll honor these games with more medals.
The Mediterranean Games of the 19th edition are witnessing a very high level of competition, as most athletes are showing very noticeable willingness to achieve the best they can, while Algerian athletes are delivering the maximum of efforts to maintain their place in the top-ranking sports players.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. The NATO countries meeting at summit in Madrid will officially invite Sweden and Finland to join the alliance. President Vladimir Zelensky asked the United Nations to expel Russia from the UN. An explosive public testimony of former White House aide wrote that January 6 committee that Donald Trump was informed that protesters had weapons, but he still supported to march inside the Capitol. Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso has escaped an attempt by opposition lawmakers to remove him. That's all we have for now. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye-bye.